it simply surprised me was that this up-and-coming, bright, hard-hitting, moving, enthusiastic entrepreneur, if I hate to use that word, it's an awful word, was dressed the way he was dressed. But I wasn't really that bothered. I said I enjoyed solving other people's problems, and here was a guy who had lots of them. So I was pretty happy with that.
So here's the other question I was going to ask is, you're an amateur photographer. You never thought to take a photo of the Apple II prototype? There's no photo.
You're right. No, I never thought to take.
I'm shocked.
Take photographs.
I am shocked, right?
Well, here Steve Jobs was walking around. He bought the Polaroid land camera, He never took a picture of the prototype. Woz, I think, never took a picture
I
of the
know,
prototype.
because I've asked everybody.
And everybody asked me, it was wire wrapped. It was wire wrapped with that blue Kynar wire. Yes. I remember that thing very well.
Actually, what I've heard is point to point.
It was point to point, wire wrap.
Which is harder than wire wrap.
No, it wasn't soldered. It was wire wrap.
Really?
The one I remember.
Where's Woz?
Where's Woz?
Well, the first Apple was the Apple I.
Yeah, I know that.
But the first Apple II prototype, yes.
Wire wrap, wouldn't it?
No, not wire wrap.
Point to point.
No.
Point to point soldered?
I soldered little wires point to point, and that because it kept the whole thing less busy looking, less covered with mush.
The Apple I
and
the same way?
Apple I the same way.
Yeah.
All the projects I ever built were that way, except one where I designed Breakout, but Steve did the wiring on it from my design, so he wire wrapped at Atari.
Which doesn't take as much skill.
But
anybody can do it. You have a number of wire lists.
It's more normal. But I had a technique that I had used for 5 years on about the Apple II was maybe about the eighth or 10th project in a row I'd built this way, where I took little pieces of wire, soldered it onto one pin, stretched it out, cut it the right distance, stripped it, soldered it on the other pin, kept everything as simple as it didn't look like there was as much there as wire wrapping.
The solder goes in your mouth, right?
Well, I'll tell you what, if you had to do that today,
yes. Oh,
yes.
Here's how you did it.
25,000th of an inch between pins.
You've got to hear this. I would hold the wire down by the pin and take the soldering iron with my right hand and the wire with my left hand, and I'd have the solder in my mouth.
I was right.
And I'd put the solder down there, and all the lead in that solder never affected
just
me.
imagine how smart you and I would have been if we hadn't done that. I did it since I was a teenager.
I did the
solder
same
in my
thing.
mouth. Right.
Yes. The neat thing about us hardware guys is we were builders. it was kind of fun.
I don't know how much lead is in me right now, but I imagine it's a lot.
Of course, I used to roll mercury. I had a big jar of it at home, and I would roll it around on the floor and everything.
Oh my God.
Can you survive that? Well, you can adjust mercury and it's okay.
I believe it.
Yeah.
It's when it's some compound of mercury that is a real problem.
It's the methylated mercury compounds, which are very complicated.
Yeah, some other compounds, but not pure mercury.
So the Apple I and the Apple II prototypes, did you use a backplane perf board?
What I did was I would get these little breadboards that we had at Hewlett Packard.
Oh yeah,
and I would get
those are good.
And I would get the chips there. I would think it out on paper as to where each chip should be placed, knowing which one chip's connected to which chips with how many wires, so you could kind of optimize it a bit in your head. Then I would solder in the sockets for the chips, and then I would label each one, and I'd look at my design, and it would say I have to go from the chip in A8 pin 4, and I have to solder that over to the chip in B6 pin 2. And I would just do one at a time and fill the board up with wires, and when it was done, start testing it and find out what got missed, what got wired a little bit wrong, what doesn't work, what does.
You remember the early days working there on the Good Earth, when, remember when you blew up an S-86? Okay, let me tell a story about one.
An S-86. A cherry bomb? I had M80s.
No, but S-80s, exclusive war.
Exclusive war game.
Oh.
Right. S-86, you had them on the clock.
Oh, how did I blow it?
Well, anyway, what happened was this. In the early days, we had all these prototypes and stuff, and Woz never trusted the power supply. If anything was wrong, it was the power supply that was wrong. And one day he was working back there, and he had the board working just fine. Then he fooled around for a little bit, and then it stopped working, and the power supply started chirping. Chirp, 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 right? You knew it was the power supply. So I came over finally. I said, okay, Woz, So I'm looking at the power supply, and just then there was a loud report, bang, and this integrated circuit blew its top. What had happened? He put an S86 in backwards, right? And you shorted out the +5.
Oh, that makes sense. Yeah.
And it exploded about 5 minutes later. Anyway,
But we hardware guys always went around a few explosions, and a number of times in our life we got shocked. And I have a little device. It's a Russian roulette version of a little dot that goes da, 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 da. 4 people put their fingers into holes, and when the dot finally stops, the person that stops on gets shocked. Hardware guys will stick their hands in and play the game. Software guys say, "Why would I want to get shocked?" You get used to certain things in
I've
life.
never heard of that. That's really fun.
Yeah.
Where
Well,
I still have it. I've done it. Yeah.
there are thousands of good stories, actually.
Well, you'd be smart to get the funny stories regarding the Macintosh from the people that are here. Encapsulate those. They love telling those.
You should concentrate on the Macintosh.
Engineers always have a lot of fun stories about what went wrong and what went right and pranks.